So The Big Fix is basically a cricketing thriller. I believe it's the first book of its kind. It is a mystery, it is a whodunit set against the backdrop of a T20 tournament. So you have two sort of parallel tracks happening. On the one hand, you have investigations going on into an attempted murder, and simultaneously you have a beleaguered captain who's out of form, and his team needs to win their last three matches in the league to go through to the semi-final or to advance further. So, on the one hand, you have these investigations, on the other hand, you have what's happening to this team, and at a certain point, the two tracks come together towards the end. But what for me was great fun was to write the cricket matches, which I sort of wrote in great loving detail, ball by ball, virtually, and also to sort of explore the whodunit angle. So I'm hoping that if you like cricket, you'll like the book, and if you also like murder mysteries, you'll like the book. Of course, the catch is that you can't really follow the mystery until and unless you're also following the matches. The Big Fix was actually, the timing of the launch was a little serendipitous. It was actually a book that had been in my mind for a while, but I finally got down to writing it only this year. As anyone who follows cricket for any length of time will know, the South African born coach of the Pakistan team, Bob Woolmer, had died very mysteriously during the Cricket World Cup. And while it was explained, logically, I think there have been lots of conspiracy theories that have gone on about that particular event. And it always sort of stayed in my mind. And then over the years, there have been numerous cases of fixing in cricket. Last year there was the whole thing about 3 Pakistani cricketers being sort of caught of spot fixing, and that's why I sort of sat down earlier this year and I said, okay, if you take that and you take what's gone on in fixing and all the stuff you read, then it would make for a fascinating novel. The other thing that sort of always intrigued me was why, given that cricket is so rich in drama and it has so many twists and turns, why so little fiction is written about cricket? You have some wonderful non-fiction being written, you've had some magnificent works being written, but there's very little cricket fiction itself. And as a sort of cricket tragic, I always felt that there was a lacuna that existed there. And I thought, given the story, given the possibility of a fixing conspiracy going on within a tournament, and given that you can also that cricket matches themselves provide for so much thrills, it would make for a really interesting story if put together. So I sat down to write it. And at the point of time when I sat down to write it, the latest controversy of the IPL hadn't started yet. And I was almost through the first draft when I was talking to my publisher, and we were generally meeting for something else, and while we were talking, he said, so what are you doing right now? And I said, I'm writing a novel about cricket and fixing and so on. And he said, oh great, we'll talk about it sometime. And as this conversation was happening, suddenly I got an SMS alert which said that 3 cricketers had been arrested on suspicion of fixing. And when I told him this, he got very excited and said, oh, it's become very topical, so why don't you just show me the draft? And I did, and we then sort of moved it up fast, we sort of fast-tracked it, and that's why the book is here when it is. They sort of run in parallel, because for example, you begin with a match and then the sort of attempted murder happens later that night, and then more and more sort of angles start to creep in, and with each match, if you sort of are reading closely between the lines, for example, at some point of time there is talk of a fixing conspiracy. So if you look closely at the matches, you will start to sense who might be involved in the fixing. Equally, of course, there are a few red herrings because you can't make things too obvious. So to me as an author, it's sort of great fun to just sort of sprinkle them along. And a lot of initial readers sort of got back to me and said, after they finished the book, they sort of went back and started reading the matches all over again to see what were the points that they missed, where were the sort of clues that they missed. Also because, there were some, I obviously don't want to give away too many plot spoilers, but, part of the fun of writing a whodunit is that you sort of create a trail and the reader is convinced, oh, this is the trail, and then at the end it turns out that it's not. So that was also part of the joy of writing the book. I'd put it like this, about 25% is stuff that has come out in the public domain and is well known. About maybe 20 to 25% is stuff that is sort of known within cricketing circles and to some sections of the media, but has never been publicly revealed because it could not be confirmed. And about 50% is fiction. Now, it's up to the reader to figure out which is which. Well, I've been a journalist for close to 20 years now, so you obviously get to find out things. There is some stuff that never gets published because it's never been officially confirmed, and you run the risk of libel. There is some stuff that your sources will tell you under strict secrecy. They'll say, oh, this happened, but please don't write it because everyone will know that I'm the one who leaked it and I'll get into trouble. And obviously, if this is a source you've developed over a long time, you don't sort of get him into jeopardy because you hope to keep getting more stuff out of him. So yes, having a journalistic background helped in that sense. Yeah, I think initially it's not a sort of classic thriller, obviously, but I think what I was trying to do was make sure that it reads fast and that it has lots of thrills, and that the thrills don't necessarily come just from the mystery. I'd like to believe that you can read each of the matches as a sort of standalone thriller in its own right, because cricket itself, like I said, provides so much drama and so many thrills, and this is T20, which has even more sort of twists and turns. So what I do, for example, is sort of take the investigation from point A to point B and stop at that point, and hopefully sort of leave the reader a little dangling, a little suspense, and then cut to a match. And then what I was trying to do was there are basically 240 balls in a T20 match, and when I actually wrote the book originally, I wrote it ball by ball, what happened in each of the 240 matches. Now my publisher and editors prevailed upon me to compress that a little, so it's compressed, but even so I think it's much more detailed cricket action than than I've ever read in any book, and I've read a fair amount of books. And each match sort of goes down to the last ball. So each match is sort of down to the wire, and I'm sort of hoping, and at least the first few bits of feedback that I got, I was hoping that people would sort of read the matches and be sort of on the edge of their seat just to the fate of the match itself. While you're reading the match, you should forget about the mystery and just try to figure out what happened in the match. And once the match is over, you sort of unwind, you say, okay, great match, and then you sort of go back to the mystery itself. So in that sense, it's really not a classic thriller, but the thrills come as much from the mystery as from the matches, hopefully. There are fictional teams. No, India is not playing, Pakistan is not playing, say Chennai Super Kings or Kolkata Knight Riders are not playing, but there are fictional T20 teams I've created. Some of the players I've been told by readers remind them of such and such real life player. Like I said, I'd say there are some characteristics that you draw upon, but a lot of it is sort of imagination. The whodunit gets resolved. It's I wouldn't say it's my take on what really happened. It is an explanation, and I mean, I think there have been lots and lots of alternative explanations, imaginary explanations provided. This happens to be one of those. I certainly wouldn't say this is what happened.